Hey everybody, welcome back to the Chorizo Bros. This is Joseph back at it again with another book review for you. Today, I wanted to keep going with the 1999 theme and reviewing Chuck Palahniuk books. So here we are today talking about 1999's Survivor. So where I stand on this book is I had read a couple of Chuck Palahniuk's books when I was a teenager, and this was like maybe the third or fourth book that I'd done when I was going through Chuck Palahniuk's library. Because I don't know if I mentioned this on my last video that I'd done of Chuck Palahniuk's work, that reinvigorated my interest in reading again. So Chuck Palahniuk was kind of this unique writer that wrote in a really fun way and talked about really oddball, strange, satirical, comedic things that made me really interested in seeing what this kind of writing could do, and I wanted to just see more. So that's where I kind of had the interest in this in. So of course, you start off with Choke and Fight Club. Those are kind of like the main ones that everybody starts with when reading Chuck Palahniuk's work. And I want to say this was like the third or fourth book of his that I'd done. And you know, it was just something that I'd read. I kind of enjoyed it, and I moved on to the next thing. I didn't really think of it, right? And so I have read this book before, but it was when I was like a teenager. If you guys caught our last video, we talked about The Matrix, and I'd done a Lullaby review earlier. So, you know, I was already on the Chuck Palahniuk thing, and then The Matrix is a 1999 movie, and this just so happened to be a 1999 book. So I was like, okay, this is kind of fitting for the next video for us, right? So that's kind of where we landed on this. So rereading it now, very, very recently, it landed in a... Interestingly, it kind of landed in the same place for me. I don't really have a different feeling on this. Again, when I'd read it before, it was kind of just the next thing I was reading of his, and it didn't sit with me for a long time, or there wasn't really anything that was unique about it enough for me to remember it or go back and think about it a lot. Choke definitely has those moments. Lullaby has those moments. Fight Club has those moments. But there was nothing really that stood out for me then, and then now upon reread, I'm kind of like, you know, it lands at like a solid 3. It was definitely fun. It's interesting. It's a page turner. You do want to continue and see what happens. There's some fun suspense, very interesting concepts, black, dark humor, satire. I mean, it's all the stuff that you expect from Chuck Palahniuk, right? But there was something about it now where it just kind of landed in a place for me that's just a little bit above average. I don't feel like my time was wasted. It didn't hit that specific thing that I was, you know, I guess expecting. It just didn't land fully. And landing is an apt description of this. The basic plot of this, the very basic plot of this, is our main character, Tender Branson, is a surviving member of a suicide cult. Sort of framing device of this story is he's recording his story on a black box of a plane that is set to crash, that he's hijacked, and he's sort of telling his story how he ended up there. And again, 1999, so this kind of thing can only be written before 2001, of course. Everybody knows why that's going to be an uncomfortable thing. And reading this, I didn't remember, or I didn't click that it was pre-2001. So I was like, it's kind of wild that they're talking about plane hijackings. And those of you that know, it can make you feel uncomfortable if you've have the historical context of that. So knowing that it's 99, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. This is definitely a different vibe than I'd had before. I don't think he would have written this post 9/11, right? So yeah, he's hijacked a plane. He's planning on, and it makes it known that he's let everybody go. It's really just him. The pilots jumped out, and he's going to land this plane, or he's going to crash this plane, and it's part of the suicide idea. It's pretty rough. Okay, so that stuff aside, one of the interesting things that I noticed like immediately, I was a few pages in and I was like, how am I on page, 200 and whatever? I just started the book and I looked at it, and all the chapters and page numbers go backwards. So you're kind of counting down. It sort of sets up this counting down idea. And I thought, that was kind of fun. It's just a thing that you see on the page, and it was just an experiment, something kind of cool to see as you're reading. So yeah, our character Tender Branson is this member of the suicide cult. He's a lower member on this cult. There's this thing with elders, and there's the young ladies who they call them biddies. They're to do your bidding, and then your tenders are like sort of the lower end. Their first name is always kind of where their social status is in the cult. And so he's kind of like the second born in his family, even though his older brother, is like a few minutes older than him because he's a twin. So there's a twin aspect to this. So there's the firstborn called Adam. That's obviously a nod to something. So what happens is everybody in the cult starts, taking themselves out, self-deleting. I don't know what kind of language you could have used on fucking YouTube, right? So they start doing that. He's one of the last members, and he's got a caseworker, so that's a big character in this. And he's sort of taken this life of being just a person that tends the flock and tends the farm and like just does all the work. So he's out in the quote unquote regular world, and he's still stuck doing all of that. He's still doing menial labor, and that's sort of his penance or his whatever. And what ends up happening, and sort of the big driving force of this, is like somebody put an ad in something, or like there's a suicide hotline number that they got one of the numbers wrong. So it ends up being that the misprint of this suicide hotline number is Tender Branson's phone number. So he starts getting these calls of people that are like ready to, do that. And, your expectation being the operator of a suicide hotline is that you're supposed to talk them down from whatever emotional place they're in to prevent them from doing that. That's not what Tender Branson does, okay? He gets some sort of pleasure, some sort of glee in telling them they should just do it. And it's a really crazy, it's a crazy way to start your story, to be like, that's our main character, holy shit. And then he ends up being a part of, being the driving force of why one of the callers goes through with their suicide attempt, and it goes through. They die, they perish, and he visits the grave of this person who he talked into or didn't try to stop killing themselves. And in going to the grave of this person, meets this character called Fertility Hollis. Now, Fertility is the sister of the character that killed themselves, and he immediately is attracted to them. He starts falling in love with Fertility. He's so interested in them, and they get mixed up. She's got psychic powers. There's a lot of strange things here. So, aside from just telling you everything that's going on, this story is bananas. It is a wild story. There's really crazy things that happen in here, and you kind of have to be like, I'm on the ride. I'm just going to go and see what happens. Spoiler alert, because I'm just going to say kind of what's going on here. You find out that some of the suicide cult members didn't actually kill themselves in the real, quote unquote, real world. They're getting murdered, and it's being made to look like suicide. And the twist or whatever is that it's Tender's older brother, Adam, who's been going around and setting these up, killing people, and making it look like a suicide. And of course, as part of their suicide agreement or whatever, he's now looking for his younger brother to make him a part of that. So that's sort of the big thing here, is like, what's going on? And then he ends up having this relationship with Fertility that's unusual, and she starts, because she's psychic, she has these psychic visions. She knows when like these events are going to happen, a fire at a department store, or a rabies outbreak in a park or something, these really odd, strange things. And over the course of this, Tender being the last survivor of this cult, him hooking up with Fertility, they through the course of the story, he becomes this sort of TV media personality, because it's a sensational story, this last remaining member of this thing. And then he uses her insight into what happens in the future to make predictions and just gain popularity. And then all of a sudden he gets really obsessed with like working out and tanning, and he's all concerned about the calories he's intaking, because now all of a sudden he's got attention and adoration, and there's this always being the lower end in this cult, all of a sudden he's this bright, shining personality, and that it kind of, the commentary here is that that's addictive, and all of a sudden you lose who you were because you're trying to just, you have to push the thing a little bit further. And there's a really funny scene in here where she's like, Fertility is, telling him, hey, I've got another prediction for you. And he's like, no, that doesn't work. No, that doesn't work. No, that's not sensational enough. That's not interesting enough. And it almost like there's this like PR thing about it, and it becomes this like business transaction. So there's a lot of commentary here on what's going on with media, and he's definitely it's a scathing sort of criticism on Hollywood and just the media in general. And I really appreciated that. Now, again, it kind of sounds, I'm kind of getting, my energy's going up here because it is really absurd and really funny. So yeah, that's why it is more positive than it is negative. But some of the things that I didn't really care for about this were, and I'm finding this in all of Chuck Palahniuk's work, and I'm not really loving it, is the repetitive nature of some of these things. Now, again, I know the artistic styling of it, there's kind of a point of it's tedium. It becomes this like thing. So he's sort of going along with that idea. Things like fame and what's going on with becoming a TV personality, all of a sudden you do it long enough and then it becomes as menial as cleaning the grout in a bathroom. So there's this, I understand kind of what's going on there. I'm not in love with the repetition. Now, he did this in Lullaby a lot, and somebody, thank you, by the way, I'm forgetting your username, pointed out to me that in Lullaby, the repetition was supposed to lend itself to that there's spells, and part of how spells work is repetition. So he was sort of doing that in the writing, that, hey, part of the repetition is you're supposed to remember that there's spells happening constantly. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's a fair point. There's a good reason to have that. But like with Fight Club and the I am Jack's whatever, adrenal gland, whatever. So there was this constant like thing. In this, it's always like, oh, in order to get blood splatter out of drywall, you'd use cornstarch and toothpaste, and cool that's in there, but I don't know. I wasn't in love with it. I just didn't care for just how much of it was in here. So that's definitely a drawback for the story for me. It was like, okay, cool, I got to read about how to clean stuff and how to hem things and sew things. It's just pulled me out of the story every time I saw it. So I was kind of not in love with that. Overall, this book is a lot of fun. You kind of have to be okay with the dark comedy. You have to accept the absurdity for what it is. If you're willing to go there with him and you're willing to see the darkness inside of this kind of funny story, and vice versa, see the humor in how dark this goes, you're probably going to have a pretty good time. And it's just a fun read. There is a thing that made me laugh out loud with this, and again, this book is supposed to be funny, is what Tender lands on whenever he's giving his predictions, when he does his like last big one. What ends up being the thing he finds to be the most salacious and the most important, even though everything that she said to him was like, yeah, that's kind of a big deal. There's going to be a shooting, or there's going to be a whatever. What he ends up choosing, and what starts people, into this, gets people into this like frothing mob mentality, is he gives up the winner of the Super Bowl, and that makes people so pissed. And there's this like, there's something really funny about that. There's like a fake wedding at one point. He's supposed to marry, they've chosen the wife that he's supposed to have, and then she bails out or something happens to her, so they bring in an actress to play that person who's, it's already a fake wedding. So having this other person, oh, we'll just put the camera so you can't really see their face. So there's this sort of like, it's all fake. It's all like, it doesn't matter. Just keep making the show. Yeah. So there's a lot of commentary here. So on that, let me go ahead and read kind of one of the things in here that I always try to like read a little spot. And again, there's supposed to be a humorous aspect to this. According to my personal trainer, the best way to get illegal steroids is you find a cat sick with leukemia and take it around to veterinarians who will prescribe preloaded syringes of animal steroids equivalent to the best steroids for human use. He said if the cat lives long enough, you can stockpile a year's worth. So again, how fucking absurd, right? But it is very funny. That's when he's sort of becoming this personality. All of a sudden, he's becoming obsessed with his image and whatever. He starts off being kind of this schlubby, just random guy, and then he turns into this like person that's obsessed with self-image. So very interesting story. And I don't really want to spoil the ending. If you're going to read it, you're going to read it. If this hasn't gripped you, if you're not interested by now in this story, it's just not going to work for you at all. But it is a worthy addition to the Chuck Palahniuk library, and I'm probably going to knock out a couple of more of his books. I think if the repetition stuff and the style becomes boring, I will probably abandon reading his stuff for now, at least for a while. But being able to sort of interject these bigger episodes with something quick that I can just read and enjoy has been really fun for me. So on that note, I think I'm going to get out of here, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. Tell me more about some of Chuck's work if you've checked it out, what maybe you might be interested in me checking out next. I think the next one that we are going to be doing is a longer episode on the movie Heat. Me, Art, and Jeremy, we should be bringing that to you soon, very soon, hopefully. And that's going to be a hell of a lot of fun, because those of you that have seen Heat, you know how badass of a movie that is. So I'm excited to get started on that. We just wanted to do something really fun, something that we all knew we kind of enjoyed. And that's where we're going to end up. That's the next thing that I'm going to be bringing you. I'm going to be reading some stuff on the side, and we'll see where that's going to go. But let me go ahead and thank you again. Like and subscribe, leave some comments, tell me what's going on, tell me what your thoughts are. If you love this book, did you hate it? Are you going to read it? Did anything about this video make you want to check it out or stay well away from it? Let me know. Thank you again, guys.